The crown hit the floor and cracked in half, and the entire throne room went silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat. I was standing near the back wall with my toolbox, the only human in a hall full of tall, silver-skinned nobles, and for one terrible second, I thought someone was going to blame me for it. My name is Daniel Hargrove, and 3 months earlier, I had been fixing water pipes in a small town nobody outside my country had heard of. Now I was kneeling on cold marble in a palace built on a planet called Varel, holding a wrench that suddenly felt like the most useless object in the universe. The crown belonged to Queen Alira Voss, ruler of the Varellan Dominion, a civilization so advanced that they built ships out of light and grew their buildings instead of constructing them. Humans were new to this part of the galaxy. We had just signed a treaty with them, and I was part of the maintenance crew assigned to keep human-made equipment running inside the embassy wing of the palace. I was not supposed to be anywhere near the throne room, but a broken cooling unit had called me there that morning, and now I was watching history fall apart in front of me. The crown was not made of metal or stone. It was grown from something called sundrite crystal, a living mineral that connected to the queen's own life signal. It was not just a decoration, it was proof that she was the rightful ruler, because the crystal only responded to her. When it cracked, alarms began to flash on every wall, and I heard someone shout that the coronation of her successor, her younger sister Nea, would begin in 6 hours, whether the crown was fixed or not. If the crown stayed broken, the Dominion's law said the throne would pass to Nea immediately, no matter what Alira wanted. And from the fear on people's faces, I understood something else. Nea was the one who wanted this. I had heard whispers in the maintenance halls for weeks, rumors that she had allies among the guards, that she thought her sister was too soft on the new alliance with Earth. Nobody had proof. But nobody had a broken crown before either, and it had just happened during a private ceremony, where almost no witnesses were allowed, except a handful of guards and one human plumber, who was not supposed to be there. 6 of the palace engineers surrounded the broken pieces within minutes. They were called the Lattice Council, the smartest minds in Varellan science, and they carried devices that looked like folded light. They pointed their tools at the crown and murmured words I did not understand. After 10 minutes, one of them, a tall woman named Cyril Cade, stood up and shook her head. "The crystal rejects synthetic repair," she said. "It is a living structure. Our tools cut, weld, and rebuild. This will not be rebuilt. It must be regrown, and regrowth takes weeks, not hours." The queen stood at the top of the steps, her hands shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her 30s by human standards, with pale blue eyes and a calm voice that did not match the fear in her posture. "Then find another way," she said. "I did not survive 2 wars and a famine to lose my throne because of a crack in a rock." Nobody answered her. The guards shifted uncomfortably. I could see Nea standing near the side entrance, arms folded, watching everything with an expression that was almost, but not quite, hiding a smile. I should have stayed quiet. I was a stranger here, a human with dirt still under his fingernails from fixing a broken pipe joint an hour earlier. But I looked at the crown pieces on the floor, and something in the back of my mind clicked into place, the same way it did when I looked at a busted engine or a cracked foundation. I saw the fracture lines. I saw where the pressure had built and released, and I saw, more than anything, that the break followed a natural seam, not a random shatter. Someone had hit it in exactly the right spot to split it clean, which meant this was not an accident. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "Excuse me," I said. My voice sounded small in that enormous room. "I think I can fix it." Every head turned toward me. Cyril Cade laughed, not cruelly, but with the tired amusement of someone explaining gravity to a child. "This is sundrite crystal, human. It took our science 3,000 years to understand it. Our advanced tools cannot mend it. What could your hands do that our machines cannot?" I did not have a clever answer. I only had an idea, and ideas were the one thing I had never been afraid to test. "On Earth," I said, "we have an old art. When something valuable breaks, like a bowl or a cup, we don't throw it away, and we don't try to make it look like it was never broken. We fill the crack with gold. We make the break part of the object's story instead of hiding it. It's called kintsugi. The object becomes stronger at the broken point, not weaker. because the seam holds it together in a new way. Cyril's eyes narrowed. Filling a crack with gold is not repair, it is decoration. Maybe for a bowl, I said. But you said this crystal is alive. Living things don't heal by staying the same shape they were before an injury. They heal by growing new tissue around the wound. What if the crystal doesn't need to be forced back into its old form? What if it needs something to bond the two halves while it heals itself, the way a bone needs a splint, not a replacement? The room went quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Queen Alira walked down the steps slowly, stopping a few feet from me. Up close, her eyes were the color of a clear morning sky, and there was something sharp behind the fear, a mind that was still working, even in a crisis. You believe a splint could hold my crown together long enough for it to heal itself? I don't know for certain, I said honestly, but your engineers already told you their tools can't do this. I'm asking for a chance to try something they haven't. I promise you, if it doesn't work, you've lost nothing you hadn't already lost. She studied me for a long moment. Behind her, I heard Nea's voice, smooth and mocking. Sister, we are wasting precious hours entertaining a servant's fairy tale. The law is clear. Let the ceremony proceed as scheduled. Something about the eagerness in her voice made the queen's jaw tighten. She turned back to me. 6 hours, she said. You have 6 hours, human. Guards, give him whatever he asks for. If he fails, nothing changes. If he succeeds, I will decide what happens next. I did not waste time being grateful. I knelt beside the broken crown and started asking questions, fast. I learned that sundrite crystal conducted a low electrical signal matched to its owner's body, similar to a heartbeat pattern. I learned it grew in caves deep underground, feeding on mineral-rich water and faint traces of geothermal heat. I learned that no substance in Varellan science had ever successfully bonded with it, because every material they tried was either too rigid, which caused new cracks, or too soft, which crumbled under pressure. What they had never tried was something flexible enough to move with the crystal's natural expansion, but strong enough to hold weight, and warm enough to trigger the crystal's own healing signal instead of blocking it. I thought about copper wiring, about the resin I used to seal old pipe joints back home, about the tiny electrical pulse generators in my toolbox that I used to test circuit continuity. None of it was fancy. None of it belonged in a palace. But engineering is engineering, whether you're fixing a boiler or a crown. I asked for 3 things: a fine mesh of conductive thread, which the palace had in its textile labs for making ceremonial robes, a small vial of thermal resin used in Varellan shipbuilding to seal hull seams, and access to my own toolbox from the embassy wing, which a guard fetched for me while I worked. Cyril Cade watched me the entire time, arms crossed, clearly expecting me to fail. A few of the younger engineers drifted closer, curious, despite themselves. I did not mind the audience. I had learned a long time ago that the people who laugh at unusual methods are usually the ones who have never had to survive with limited tools and a ticking clock. I began by cleaning the broken edges with a soft cloth, careful not to touch them with bare fingers, since the crystal reacted to skin contact from anyone other than the queen. Then I laid the conductive mesh along the fracture line, in a pattern that followed the natural seam I had noticed earlier, weaving it the way you might stitch a wound, not covering the crack but bridging it. Next came the resin, warmed slightly, and applied in a thin layer over the mesh. It was risky. If the resin reacted badly with the crystal's structure, it could destroy what was left of it permanently. Cyril warned me of this at least 3 times, her voice climbing with tension each time. I ignored the fear crawling up my own spine and focused on my hands, on the small motions I had practiced 1,000 times fixing things that others had given up on. The final step was the electrical pulse. I connected a small battery from my toolbox, adjusted the frequency using a formula the palace scientists gave me, based on the Queen's own recorded heartbeat pattern, and touched the 2 wires to opposite ends of the mended crack. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a thin golden light began to spread along the seam, following the path of the conductive thread, glowing brighter with each passing second. The crystal was warming, not from the resin, but from something inside itself, a response, almost like recognition. Gasps echoed around the room. Cyril Cade stepped closer. her earlier disbelief melting into something closer to awe. The golden light spread until the entire fracture line glowed like a vein of fire running through stone, and slowly, the two halves of the crown began to pull toward each other, not forced, but drawn, the way a wound closes on its own. It took almost 4 hours. I stayed on my knees the entire time, monitoring the pulse, adjusting the frequency when the glow flickered, keeping the mesh steady when the crystal shifted. My back ached and my hands cramped, but I did not stop, because I understood something the engineers with their elegant tools had missed. Sometimes the most advanced solution is not the most complicated one. Sometimes it is simply patience, combined with the willingness to work with a problem instead of against it. When the light finally faded, the crown sat whole in front of me, except for one difference. A thin golden seam ran across its surface where the crack had been, faintly glowing even at rest, a permanent mark of what had happened. It was not hidden. It was not erased. It was simply part of the crown now, and somehow, it looked more powerful than before, not less. Queen Alira lifted it with both hands, and I watched her breath catch as the crystal responded instantly to her touch, brighter than the reports said it had ever been before. "It's not just repaired," she whispered. "It's stronger." Cyril Cade knelt beside me and examined the seam with a device that measured the crystal's internal signal. Her hands were trembling slightly. "The bonding point is amplifying her resonance," she said, almost to herself. "In 3,000 years, we never considered that a wound could become a source of strength instead of a weakness." I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after hours on the hard floor, and that was when the guards near the side entrance moved. 2 of them stepped toward Nea, who had gone very pale, her earlier confidence replaced by something closer to panic. "Search the chamber where the crown was kept this morning," the queen said, her voice suddenly steady and sharp, all traces of fear gone. "I want to know exactly how a crystal that has survived 1,000 years of ceremonies suddenly cracked along a perfect seam only hours before a coronation that would have benefited exactly one person in this room." Nea opened her mouth to protest, but one of the guards produced a small device from beneath a cushion near the ceremonial altar, a tool clearly designed to apply precise pressure at a specific point. It was not palace issue. Whispers spread through the court instantly. I will not pretend I understood every detail of what happened next, since politics on Varel moved faster and stranger than anything I was used to. But within the hour, guards escorted Nea from the throne room, and the coronation ceremony that had been scheduled to crown her was quietly cancelled. Queen Alira remained on her throne, the golden seam in her crown catching the light every time she moved her head. I gathered my tools, expecting to slip quietly back to my maintenance duties, the way I always did after a job. That was the part of the story where, on any other day, nobody would remember my name by evening. But Queen Alira did not let me leave. "Wait," she said, and the entire court fell silent again, watching her, the way people watch something they have never seen before. She stepped down from the throne, still holding the crown, and walked toward me. Every noble in that room straightened, because in 3,000 years of Varellan history, the queen did not walk toward anyone. People walked toward her. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the golden light of the crown reflected faintly in her eyes. "You had nothing to gain by helping me," she said. "You are not Varellan. You owe our throne no loyalty. Your own people back on Earth would not have known or cared whether I kept my crown or lost it to my sister's ambition. Why did you try?" I thought about it honestly before answering, because the question deserved honesty. "Where I come from," I said, "we don't walk past something broken just because it's not ours to fix. If I have the tools and the knowledge to help, and someone needs it, that's usually reason enough." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that made every noble in that hall go completely still. She knelt. The queen of the Varellan Dominion, ruler of a civilization that had existed for 3,000 years, knelt on the marble floor in front of a human maintenance worker, in front of her entire court. "In our tradition," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall, "a ruler kneels only before the crown itself, and before no living being. I am breaking that tradition today, because you gave me back more than a crown. You showed my people a truth we had forgotten. That strength is not the absence of damage. It is what grows from the willingness to mend rather than discard. She reached up, unclipped a small crystal pin from the collar of her robe, one that I later learned marked someone as a protector of the crown, a rare honor given only a handful of times in the Dominion's history, and pressed it into my palm. "Daniel Hargrove," she said, using my full name for the first time, which meant someone had already told her, "You are named a protector of the crown of Varel, with all rights and honors that title carries, for as long as you wish to hold it." Nobody in that room moved for what felt like a full minute. I heard Cyril Cade exhale sharply behind me, and somewhere near the back, I thought I heard someone whisper the word, "impossible." I did not know the customs well enough to respond with anything formal, so I simply said what felt honest. "Thank you," I said. Though I should tell you, back home, fixing things for people usually just gets you a cup of coffee and a handshake, not a crown pin. This is a bit more than I'm used to. A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the court, breaking the tension, and even the Queen's serious expression cracked into something close to a smile. "Then consider it a very generous cup of coffee," she said, rising to her feet again, the crown catching the light with every movement, the golden seam shining like a vein of sunrise across dark crystal. I left the throne room that evening, carrying a small crystal pin I did not fully understand, and a story I knew nobody back home would believe. But I remembered something as I walked back through the palace halls, past guards who now looked at me differently, past nobles who a few hours earlier would not have noticed me at all. Every broken thing carries a choice. It can be discarded, replaced, forgotten, or it can be mended in a way that makes the break part of its strength instead of its weakness. I had spent my whole life fixing pipes and engines that nobody thought twice about, and it took traveling to another world to learn that the same patient hands, the same willingness to kneel down and try, could hold together something as large as a kingdom. The golden seam in that crown still glows today, or so I'm told, a permanent reminder in a palace built on perfection that sometimes the most valuable thing in the room is not the one who never breaks, but the one who knows how to heal.